And while I've been part of the community, I've had an egg for a while, I am new to the industry and new to the company. And I been in the context of doing some consulting, and then I joined full time to try to lead this transformation. My answer on how to do that is not is an approach, which is seek first to understand and then be understood.
Welcome to the Spoon Podcast, where we talk to the builders and makers on the front lines of the food tech revolution. I'm your host, Michael Wolf. Today's guest is Dan Gertsacov, the CEO of Big Green Egg. You know Big Green Eggs, right? Those green ceramic barbecues. You oftentimes see them for sale in hardware stores. You've probably been to someone's backyard where they have it. And I have to tell you, people that have them are passionate about the Big Green Eggs. And there's a reason for that. They are the company that introduced Komodo-style barbecue to the US. And they're a company that's only had 3 CEOs in their 50-year history, and Dan just took over as that third CEO. Now, Dan's largely been a tech-focused CEO for much of his career, working at companies like Google and helping McDonald's with digital transformation. And so I wanted to talk to him about his career and moving to a brand that isn't so tech-focused, and how he plans to bring the company into the future. And some of his answers might surprise you. Another interesting thing we talked about was how Dan interviewed 86 people over a 4-month period, ranging from the founder, Ed Fisher, who's still working with Big Green Egg, to folks working in the warehouse, to people selling Big Green Eggs in hardware stores and all over the place. And so 86 people, we asked them the same 5 questions, and we will get into what those questions are in the podcast. So I suggest you listen to it. It was a fun conversation. Dan's a great guy. He's got a great personality, so I think you'll enjoy the conversation. All right, folks, you already know the ask. If you haven't already rated and reviewed the podcast, please do so. It helps. Also, go to thespoon.tech/podcast to check out some of the other podcasts that we have in the new Spoon Podcast Network. We'd really appreciate it. All right, let's get to my conversation with Dan Gertsacov. All right, tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Dan Gertsacov, and I am the CEO of Big Green Egg.
Now, Dan, I've known you for a couple of years now. I think we met at the Google Food Lab. At the time, for a while, you were helping to run the biggest franchisees operations on the digital side of McDonald's. You did that. You've done a lot of other amazing things. But one of my favorite things we talked about was your journey around the world to try different cuisines and food and cooking. Tell us a little bit this fixation with yours to go around the world.
When I was a 14, 15-year-old and you said, what do you want to do when you grow up? I said, I want to be a chef. Really, a chef? What kind of chef? I want to be a Thai chef. I grew up in Rhode Island. There was one Thai restaurant in our neighborhood that fascinated me, and I wanted to go to Thailand. I had this adventure idea that I would learn. And when I was applying to college, I also applied to cooking school in Thailand. I ended up taking the safer route, my mom's recommendation, to university. Coming out of university, had the school had nominated me for a Fulbright scholarship to continue my research. I'd done as an undergrad, and I had the opportunity of going back to Thailand. I took the Fulbright. When I ended the Fulbright and there was an opportunity to stay, and this time I was in Chile in the late 90s, so a little while ago, they said, hey, why don't we start this nonprofit? There's a lot of interest in this idea of the sustainable business and social responsibility. That was my Fulbright and my thesis as an undergrad. I said, I think that's a great idea, but I'll be back in 2 months. I'm going to culinary school in Thailand. And I went. This was in late 1998, and I was in way over my head. I had worked in some restaurants and visited, dishwasher, busboy, worked a sous chef, but I'd never really worked in a restaurant. And the people that were studying there were to learn how to add Thai food to their culinary prowess. And I was learning basic skills. And so I was in way over my head, 18-hour days, got through to the end of it, learned a ton by memory. I had to take a written exam of 150 Thai dishes. It was great. And I also realized that being a chef is a very difficult career. It's a great hobby, but a very difficult vocation. And I have a ton of respect for everybody the chefs I've met since, who have been able to make it a career. And I made a decision that I didn't have to be a chef to follow my hobby and my interest in cooking. So in 1998, I set what I thought would be a 50-year goal to learn 50 cuisines. And I thought,
amazing.
Proxy of what I'd done in Thailand, I said, there's got to be another cooking school I can go to in Italy or in another country and learn about their food. And so for the last almost 30 years, 26 odd years, 28, geez, odd years I've been doing this, and I've actually accelerated the number. So I thought it would take once a year, but what I realized as I got older and with family commitments, I wouldn't have 2 months
Yeah.
to go to a place or a month or a week. 2 days. So that's I set my
Okay.
parameter at. I try to learn 10 or 15 recipes. And just last month I did my hunt to the road to 50 cuisines. I did number 48 in right outside of Venice, Italy. It was my fourth cuisine in Italy and my 48th overall. So I am hoping this year to hit 50 cuisines. And it is less about the food, it's less about the recipes. It's definitely not to do it in a professional context, but it's learn about culture through
Yeah.
food, a common bond of how food brings us together.
Wow. You're almost at 50. Do you have a final destination in mind? If you do, have you been planning that as the culmination of your 50
So I
location
would say
project?
the culmination of one step and the springboard to the next. I realize that there's too many cuisines around the world to stop at 50. So I will be announcing upon my 50th a new goal. And I'm debating now to set that goal on countries or cuisines because as I gave the example in, Italy, I've gone to 4 regions and I can probably go to 10 more at least. In Japan, I've gone to 4 regions, and
Yeah.
I've gone to 6. So there's regional approach or a country approach. I haven't decided. The To answer your question, I have a couple places in mind, but I'm not ready yet to announce. There is
Okay.
a story here in the making. And the last 10 years or so, I've been filming them, so I have some content to share, and I'm gearing up with some recipes. I think there's other people. My whole point of this is, and to your listeners as well, if your hobby like mine is food, then incorporate that into your vacations, incorporate that into your activities. And if it's about reading or it's about any of these activities, don't need to be your profession for them to be part of your life. And that's what I've been trying to exemplify with this commitment to learn different cuisines from around the world.
What is the most exotic, far out place you've gone in this 50? Because I'm just so curious about the 50
Ooh.
locations. Where are some of the crazy places you've
Right.
gone?
Crazy. I spent time, and in this case with my family, and I was doing the cooking, sleeping on a mud floor in a Hmong village in Laos. We were in Laos to learn and both to travel to Laos, but also learn about charcoal cooking in Laos, which is incredible. And as part of the cooking I did 3 days of cooking there. One of them was with this Hmong family. It was a village of 200 people. The person that hosted us in our home was the kind of the equivalent of the leader of this community, and he hosted us in his home. And we and my teenage daughters and my wife slept on his floor, and I cooked with his wife, and we found what was local. I would say one of the richest yet most humble experience I've had, and richest in the culture and the sharing and their generosity, and also what we had available to us was live fire, right, which was really incredible. They've been cooking this way for thousands of years. I had a second experience, which is also, feel free to edit all these out, but I'll share it anyway. I was in for work in Kyushu, in a coast, an island off the coast, western coast of Japan, in Fukuoka, which is a beautiful place. And I said, okay, I have to be there for work. What can I learn? I'll stay an extra couple days and take cooking classes. And that happens to be the birthplace of tonkatsu ramen, of pork bone ramen.
Oh, man.
And
Oh, man.
so I sought out, I said, who's the most famous, the son of tonkatsu ramen happens to be the founder of Apudo ramen, which is in 60 locations around the world. And so I sought out an introduction. I try to use all my, culinary experiences or friends and network to get introduced to this guy. And there's just no way. Nobody knew a way to get to this guy. So that's fine. I signed up online. I found some class online. It was above a restaurant. I go to the class. I take it. Great. We learn. We make the noodles from scratch, the gyoza from scratch. We get to the broth, and I'm listening attentively. Okay, what is in the pork bone broth? And the teacher, very sweet, said, her response was, "We can't share that. That's a recipe that is private to our restaurant." I said, "Look, I travel 14,000 miles to learn this recipe. I'm not starting a restaurant. I just want to be able to learn it." And I was at that point frustrated that this wasn't going to happen. And then out of a side kitchen, and this is how serendipity works, out of a side kitchen
Yeah.
comes a bevy of chefs. I didn't even know there was a side kitchen. And in the middle, and especially having been a bit of a student of Japanese culture, I could tell the guy in the middle was the chef that I was intending to meet. Like he had the eminence of being the ramen, literally
Mhm.
the ramen king. And so, as they're walking out, I kind of interrupted him with my 5 words of Japanese and said, sumimasen, excuse me. I came over from the United States to take this class, and what is in your broth? And very magnanimously he said, no, of course we'll share it with you. Come with me. And we went back into his side kitchen, and he spent the next hour explaining
Amazing.
what is in the tonkatsu broth. And that's what's from a serendipity standpoint. If I'd gotten introduced to him and it was a formal thing and this American's coming over to learn, he would have shaken my hand if I was lucky and moved on. But because I happened to be in his kitchen, in his restaurant on that day, and he was in a good mood, he took me back, took me to his own kitchen to share it. And those things happen when you take a risk and take an adventure and put your passions out there, and other people resonate, and the world of serendipity kind of adapts around you. So those are two of my most memorable, I would say. I've also been, in Brazil, cooking in Bahia with the family, and in Argentina doing butchery, and it's been an adventure. We're up in almost 30 countries and almost 50 cuisines, and it's been an adventure every time, because every culture around the world, the party ends in the kitchen. Every culture around the
Mhm.
world, if there's a fire lit there, everybody's eyes are attracted to it. This is, literally 800,000 years of human history is part of our DNA, and I try to tap into that DNA in every culture wherever I travel.
And at some point, you made food a big part of your career, right? And you obviously had this lifelong passion for food, but you worked for Google, you worked for these other tech startups, but at some point, food became a part of your career, and you made that journey to McDonald's, and you worked at Focus Brands,
Go
and then
to
now you're at your new space at Green Egg. So was that something you wanted to navigate into because it was part of like your passion, or just was that serendipitous that you kind of ended up working for food companies?
Both, I would say. I thought food would be my hobby and just be a foodie, right? And that was has been part of my life for a long time. And as you described, I started this nonprofit at post business school. I went to Google. With Google, got back to Latin America. And in Latin America, I had gone through, as you described, those tech startups. And throughout this, I had been doing my travel. I had invested in a restaurant. I had done some of these, kind of sideline things, but never, not my main vocation. And it was a mentor of mine, who is the gentleman who is the largest franchisee in the world of McDonald's, who said to me, he said, "You've been doing all this cooking. I'll teach you the restaurant business."
Hmm.
And my initial reaction was twofold. One, I said, my background's in digital and tech. What am I going to do? And he had the foresight to say, this is like 2014, that digital is coming to restaurants and I want to be there first. And that's why he's a self-made billionaire. He's done very well. But he saw that coming and saw my background as a compliment before I could. And then secondarily, in my response, my hobby is to learn about local food. Would I really fit in at McDonald's? He said, "You're going to be disruptive, and our company, could benefit from disruption. And I want to take a risk. And would you take a risk with me?" And I did. So I was prompted, I would say. And what I realized is that my background, which I'd been preparing for, obviously in tech and entrepreneurship and digital, and media and marketing, I was a chief marketing officer, could be fit very well into what the future, what has become the future of restaurants, or the present day of restaurants. So I went to the franchisee side, spent 5 years there, and that business taught me about operation and scale and how to execute in 20 countries, 5 languages with consistency. Coming to the United States with Rourke Capital, the owner of Focus Brands and thousands of
Yeah.
thousands of other restaurants, dozens of other brands, was to learn the food business from the franchisor side. And how do you work with franchisees? And my transition to what I'm doing now with Big Green Egg is, yeah, we're on the appliance side of that equation.
Yep.
And we are more on the home kitchen than in the restaurant kitchen. And that while we are in some restaurant kitchens and we're in some of the best chefs in the world, literally a part of my trip to Italy was to sit with Massimo Bottura and his wife, who came
Amazing.
Big Green Eggs
Amazing.
for a long time, and we've got shared values around the impact of food in communities. The goal, though, is to bring food and the hosting and the hospitality of food, which happens in restaurants, to bring that back into the home kitchen. And I think the home kitchen, and this is something I would love to explore, I know you explore in your work, is where is the innovation and the technology to make it healthier, safer, less expensive, and a better experience to cook at home. And I think Big Green Egg can be part of that solution. I'm proud to be able to have transitioned my career in this way. I look at this as my fourth career, and Big Green Egg's story is one of social impact as well. We're going to be owned by a foundation. And that model brings in my first career as a social entrepreneur, my second career in digital transformation at Google, and my third career in food comes together at Big Green Egg in this fourth career, which I hope to be a platform for decades to come. I think there's a lot of work to do to bring hospitality to start at home and getting that connectedness in the home and with family, friends, and neighbors.
So most people know or have heard of Big Green Egg. A lot of people have one. And I think Big Green Egg has something that a lot of brands would be envious or just very excited to have, which is a very passionate, longtime community. I mean, such a dedicated community that you guys have an event every year called Oktoberfest, which is kind of insane to me that you get people to travel to somewhere in the country, they fly in, and it's just because they're so dedicated to your product, so that's a really great thing. That's exciting foundation to build upon. When I look at Big Green Egg, though, I think it's a brand that necessarily hasn't evolved much in terms of because it feels like it's an older style of cooking. It's like the Kamado style cooking. It's not a tech powered device. So it's an exciting opportunity for you. You have a great foundation, but you have some work to do.
Correct. And I think what's exciting, I joined the company. I'd owned a Big Green Egg for a long time. I brought them in and started cooking on them as part of my own hobby and journey and learning to cook outdoors and live fire cooking. I started collecting various styles. And when I realized I needed a Kamado, I did my research like everybody else and said, what are the different options and what are the most expensive, the least expensive, in between? And it was a community around Big Green Egg that shifted my decision. I said, there's so many people that are so passionate about it. There's something there to it. And I tried the food and was agreed. So, but my experience also led me to think in this case, there was not a distributor yet. I was living in Bogota, Colombia. They did not yet have a distributor. So I brought them in from Miami. And I had a couple chef buddies said, oh, I'd love an egg too. So I ended up buying 3 eggs and spent quite a bit of money. And what I realized very quickly is hey, wouldn't you want to email me and see if there's something else I would need from you? Or can't we have a relationship that goes beyond the transaction? And Big Green Eggs marketing wasn't set up in a way to do that. So that was one of my frustrations as a consumer, is I wanted to have an ongoing relationship, especially being abroad, with the brand. Yeah. And there weren't onboards to that. Now, to your point around how this brand has grown over the last 50 years, it's grown through word of mouth, and it's grown, I wouldn't say, because it's been through a lot of hard work. It's definitely not been through luck, but it's grown through the community. So this is 28 years of this Oktoberfest. And it started in the back of what was a retail store, in the backyard of a retail store. And the first one was 20 people. And then the next year, more people heard about it. And the next year, more people heard about it. And then it got bigger and bigger, where this year, on October 4th of 2025, we will host it in a minor league baseball stadium with 5,000 other people that you may or may not know, but you have something in common with. You have a belief that cooking for others is an act of love. You share that belief. What's unique about this event is that as neighbors cooking for neighbors, we provide the eggs, but the people show up with the food. They buy their own food and cook for their own neighbors. And the access to the event is to be part of that experience. We have some chefs and we have some other folks that are, attractions for sure, but it's the neighbors and the people who have been there. We have a gentleman who's been there for every single one of them since the start of this thing. 28
Wow, and that's not Ed, not the founder.
This is one of our, member of our community. And, they collect T-shirts and memorabilia from it. And this is exciting. And what you described of, there's a great foundation of the brand. And I take an approach, which is what you need to do in coming into a situation like this. I'm only the third CEO in 50 years. So there's not been a lot of leadership change. And in doing so, the first step is to preserve the core and identify
Hmm.
what is the core. And in this community, it's about that neighbor cooking for neighbors. It's about that belief in hosting and cooking for others and the passion and care that goes into it. And it's not about, I have my own guilt to work through. When I was in a former life, we did a lot of campaigns around Thanksgiving's too difficult. Order your Thanksgiving to go. We'll provide sliced turkey ready to pick up. And I look back at that campaign and I feel guilty. People shouldn't be
Well,
picking up sliced turkey. They should be cooking for their family, whether it comes out great or horrible, or you grilled it, you baked it, you fried it, whatever you did. That's the memory for the 8-year-old in your family. That's the memory for years to come. My memories of childhood are anchored around those food and holiday and experiences. So many of them, and I think that is the core of this community that I think the home kitchen needs to
mhm.
stand up and preserve and retain. Now, there is the other yang of this yin yang of preserve the core. And this model is right off Collins and Porras, built to last. I didn't make this up, right? Preserve the core and stimulate progress. Now, the stimulate progress for our side of the equation is twofold. One in the product offering, and I'm not going to go where maybe your head immediately goes, which I know what you need to do. It needs to be a connected device. If it's not plugged in,
Normally I would go there, but for the big green egg, I'm like, probably not. Like, I want to hear what you're thinking of, because I don't think it's necessarily that.
it doesn't have to be. And by the way, I think we've got trapped in the last 20 years or 30 years to think technology is zeros and ones, and it's hard and software. There's been technology since humans have stood up, erect, right? This has been technology. Fire was a technology innovation
Yeah.
800,000 years ago. And so was a ceramic grill, 5,000 years ago. And so was the airflow that creates the heat and the retention of that heat. So we are going, what I think is still technology, to the core of that experience. One of our primary focuses is how to take down the barrier, which most people would say, that food tastes amazing, but I don't have the time for it. It takes too long to start. I don't know how much charcoal to add. It's too complicated. And while that is, for folks that know how to use the grill, that's not their impediment. For the broader audience, it is. So we have a whole project and a whole product team who are focused on one use case, which is 400 degrees in 15 minutes or less, without necessarily use it's technology, it's design, it's airflow. There are certain
Mm-hmm.
things that we need to bring to bear, but it does not have to be, charged or plugged in for that to happen. And that is, I think, getting back to the essence of technology and innovation, which is a customer focus on their problems to solve and not technology for its own sake. And so the problem we're solving is consumers thinking, 400 degrees, 15 minutes or less without getting more security. There's other use cases
Yeah.
that art is building on, but it's anchored on the consumer first.
So you're solving for a problem, allowing your users to do something that maybe they can't do now, which is a faster cook. People are time compressed, they're busy. So are you trying to kind of fit into more cooking occasions within their life?
That's right. I think the idea, and we're a premium product, right? So, and it's a lifetime purchase. So people say, to spend $1,500, $2,000 on a grill, depending on the size of it, and the other one I look at is $300. And what they're not considering is, one's going to rust out in 3 or 4 years, and one you're going to be handing down to your kid. So that doesn't enter into the value equation, but generally people are making that justification. Am I going to spend that much on my backyard? And we are trying to answer that question by saying yes, because it's not only for when you cook on the weekends, but you can make Tuesday night dinner. And the idea of being able to light the egg and be ready to cook in 15 minutes, and then being ready to serve in 30 minutes, that is a reality of the way in which we live our lives. And the Big Green Egg can be part of that experience. And many of our diehards, you call them the eggheads, would say, you can do that now. Why? You don't need to do anything. It's perfect the way it is. I actually think we need to make it less intimidating and bring down the barrier so it feels more accessible. We need to make the tent of Big Green Egg bigger to fit more folks, while
Mm.
preserving the core of the belief of the people that are in the tent, which is cooking is an act of love. So
that's the tricky balance. That's the tricky balance, right? So you have this dedicated hardcore folks. They're your evangelists, and they probably have sold. I can't tell you how many eggheads have probably sold other Big Green Eggs to other people because they're talking it up. And when you start to do something new, like, hey, they have this fast version, is there a balance you have to strike so you don't kind of make those folks mad, or you think they'll be okay with, hey, we're trying to bring people into the tent?
I think that it is a choice of, in our case, of our company on how we do it. I don't think that the nature of it is necessarily good or bad, but it's the how you go about doing it. So I think one, in the tone and how you respect and reflect the people that are currently in your community. And I think that that's a decision of how you do things. Number two, the core product of Big Green Egg does work today and will continue to work without ever having to be plugged in, without ever needing an electricity source, without ever needing, a battery pack or any of these things. Now, I can add on an accessory so that you can monitor your cook. I can add on an extra if you want to, if that's how you're wired, if you will, but it's not core to the experience. And I think that that's an important distinction, that folks get that optionality. So, and that's what I think pays respect to the people that are currently like, I like going through the process, or I like that it's, offline device, if you will. And I think that is also true, by the way, as our world becomes more connected in every facet, from, the planning of my calendar to the meetings I'm going to have to recording my meetings, telling me what to do as a result, all those things. We're in the, you work on this every day. We're right in the exponential part of that curve. We're in the first inning of a really exciting time over the next 5 or 10 years. It's going to create these moments, or this yearning for a space where you're disconnected, where you're tying into the way that we've been doing things for 8,000 years, and you have a real in-life experience. And I think that keys in on the beliefs that the people under the tent today have, and the beliefs that the people that we want to bring in under the tent also have. So I think if we make it about a shared belief, like a why over a what, we'll be more successful. If the tone that we use and the way in which we do things gives optionality to the people that want it to be the core without technology, or want to add on an accessory, add technology, I think that makes it more inclusive. And I think if you force people, either the people under the tent, to feel like they're being left behind, or the new people feeling like they're being pandered to, I think that's when companies get it wrong. And I've had lots of experiences having, done some of this kind of work of transformation at Google and McDonald's and Focus Brands and GoTo, that there's the way in which you go about that journey and how you bring people along on that journey matters as much as the destination.
Yeah. So as we become more and more entrenched in the world of digital, things are virtual, AI is taking hold. What's more like primitive and getting back to our very nature of digital detoxing than like cooking with fire? And so you think people will be gravitating towards this experience of cooking with their Big Green Eggs, getting away from the daily workflow of all digital tool sets. This allows them to kind of decompress and put their hands on things and work with physical atoms, et cetera.
That's exactly right. There's a ritual to it. Now, look, I also think that everybody would prefer that the grill was lit and ready to go in 15 minutes versus having to wait 2 hours, right? So, because if it's lit in 15 minutes, this thing holds heat like you've never seen. So you can keep it for 2 hours if you need the time, but having it quicker, accessible, that's not the part that most people want to hold on to. And at the end of the day, I give an example, and it is so poignant that I continually bring it up, and I'll share it with you. Over the last few months, and since I've started, but it's really, I've seen this consistently over the last few months, once or twice a month, Big Green Egg ends up in somebody's obituary. The last 200 words that somebody has to talk about a loved one, they reference this brand.
What? That's amazing.
Now, step back for a second, because I've literally redone this same Google search. I have like a Google alert that lets me know about this. I've redone the alert to add the top 20 brands in the world, whoever's list, Forbes, whoever's lists the first 20 brands, 0 of them are included. No matter how much people love Disney, or they love Coca-Cola, or they love any of those brands, they're not the last 200 words to talk about their loved one. And what is, you sometimes see a car or an automobile fanatic that will have a reference. You'll sometimes see a sports team. That happens quite a bit. He was a diehard fill in the blank, or she was. And then Big Green Egg. You don't ever see them talking about their range oven or another kind of grill. It's the Big Green Egg. And why? And I've tried to, I can't ask them, but I try to dissect what it is. And I do this by what they wrote about them. And in
Yeah.
almost every case, it's about the memory that was created on the grill, the
Huh.
effort that this case, the person who passed away went to host, to gather, to convene, to bring their family and friends together and their neighbors and cook for others. That sacrifice is what people remember. And that's what the vehicle for the Big Green Egg. So do I think that people will aspire to own a Big Green Egg? No. But they aspire to be the person that convened their family, friends, and neighbors. They aspire to put food on their plate that people say, wow, that's the best thing I've ever eaten. And we have that happens over and over and over and over again with this brand. And that's what I'm trying to
Amazing.
protect, preserve, and promote. People said this is a cult. Well, I've been studying cults and how they grow. In this case, people, their experience with the cult has to come through the food. They have to experience the hospitality that comes from when somebody hands them
Yeah.
a bite of food that came off a Big Green Egg. And that's what
Is it a type of personality, or is it a desire to entertain? It becomes a part of their identity. If it's showing up in their obituary, it becomes a part of their core identity. So is there a type of person that like is using it that like
it's men and women, it's across the country, it's not been any one location. It's an interesting nature. From what I can tell, all levels of society. It's very interesting cross section. I think it is about a set of beliefs that you put your finger on, about wanting to expressing, food is an act of love and cooking is an act of love. Like expressing that love is what's in common. Convening and hosting and hospitality. Your question about some of the most unique culinary experiences I've had around the world. I was in Lebanon and I was there to learn how to cook. And I love Lebanese food. And we were in Beirut. In this case, my wife and we take an annual honeymoon. This was the location. And in this case, we were going to a restaurant and we were lost. I couldn't find this restaurant outside of Beirut. And I stopped at what was a tire shop. There was a guy out front fixing a tire, and I was trying to show him on the map where I'm trying to go. And he waved at me, and he kind of waved me in. And I was like, get out of the car. And I said, excuse me, I'm trying to find, and he waved at me. And then he walked into his own home, which was where the tire shop was in front of. And I'm looking at my wife, like, what do I do? And so I followed him to his home. And I said, excuse me. And I'm standing by the door, and excuse me. And he said, yeah. And he kept waving at me to come closer. And what he was doing was setting up tea. He was making, I hadn't even asked him a question yet. He just could tell that clearly I was a foreigner. I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. And he was going to answer my question after we had a cup of tea. And so we ended up, my wife came in then, and we ended up sitting around this guy's table. And after an hour, he told us, we lost a reservation, but we had one of the most amazing serendipitous experiences because of hospitality. It was because and that is universal. That is in every culture around the world. And so to bring it back to Big Green Egg, those moments happen. They happen at Oktoberfest. They'll happen in your hometown this weekend, at a local, independent hardware store like Ace, where they'll be doing a demo and they'll be giving you food. You'll do it at a restaurant, and at a Massimo's restaurant this weekend, they'll be serving people on a Big Green Egg. And it shows a reflection of that love that the egg becomes a vehicle for.
You're the third ever CEO, which is an amazing thing for a 50-year-old plus company. And Ed was the founder, Ed Fisher. He brought the Big Green Egg Komodo style from Japan here. So talk about that. I think Ed's still working with the company. Talk about coming in as an outsider in a sense, because you didn't come up with the company, and working with Ed and the other kind of principles of the company and how you're kind of integrating there.
So Ed Fisher is just getting ready to celebrate his 91st birthday. He is the chairman of our board and very active. I saw him last week, and he was asking questions, wants to go into stores. He's still very, very active, which is amazing. And his stories of how this brand grew, incredible. To answer your question of and while I've been part of the community, I've had an egg for a while, I am new to the industry and new to the company. And in the context of doing some consulting, and then I joined full time to try to lead this transformation. My answer on how to do that is not is an approach, which is seek first to understand and then be understood. It's a Stephen Covey quote that I hold dear. Seek first to understand and then be understood.
You weren't the hotshot coming in with the PowerPoint deck saying, Ed, you got to do this way. You were trying to understand.
I interviewed literally 86 individuals and asked every one of those 86 people over a 4-month period the same 5 questions. This is from the questions from a professor I had at business school, wrote the first 90 days book, which is the same 5 questions. And this is how I've onboarded multiple of these experiences, and I ask these same questions. So we're taking a tangent here, but bear with me here. The same 5 questions you asked. Number 1, what's the biggest challenges our company is facing? Why? Those are 2 questions. Biggest challenges, your follow-up is why. And it's very interesting when you ask a board member what the challenges are, and when you ask, in our case, a factory distribution worker what the challenges are. They have very different answers.
And you might learn just as much from the person at the bottom of the pyramid from the person as the person at the top.
100%. So biggest challenges and why. Question 3 and 4, untapped opportunities and how. So there you see the things that people have had on the radar, other people have discussed or talked about, and then the how, which is also a key in on how the culture of how things get done in the company. And then the 5th and final question is, if we were to change spots and you'd be in my chair and I'd be in your chair, if you were in my shoes, what would you focus on? And that really gives permission to people to feel that you're reaching across the table and it's not an up down or down up, that there's a real, and people can project themselves into that role. And some of their ideas on who to talk to or what to focus on or how to do it, those are some of the pearls of the onboarding. And so I spent literally 86 of these interviews, and then I pulled it all together into a 1 page of what would be the things, because you can't focus on all of them. There's so many, only, Pareto principle at play here of the few things that are going to have the biggest impact. And so that process then requires you to then go retell that story to those 86 people so that they not only feel heard, but they feel part of your success. Yeah. And I think we're still in early stages. I'm 9 months into the CEO role. We have set out there's a playbook here of articulating the direction of this bus. Where are we trying to go? If you're on this bus, where is this bus going? Whether you're an egghead, you're in a part of the community, you're one of our dealers, you're a distributor, you're an employee, where are we going? So articulating that vision, and I've articulated that vision around growth. So we need to be a bigger part. We're a part of millions of people's lives. We can and should be a part of 10 million, 20 million people's lives. There are 8 billion people on this planet. Many of them believe cooking is an act of love. Many of them believe in gathering with their family and friends. Like, we have shared values that are bigger, and part of our cult is to grow it. So that's one. Where's the direction of the bus? The next thing is much more internal. Seats on the bus. Who's going to do what? Does the marketing team take care of trade, or does the sales team do it? Do we have internal creative or external creative? Those decisions around the organizational design become crucial to be able to drive the bus. And then the final piece of this is,
real quickly on that organizational design for essentially a founder-led company that's built from kind of a visionary. Is that a challenging part? Because, you're coming in with kind of a professional manager lens. You went to Harvard Business School. You've worked with massive companies like Google. They're probably learning a lot from you, but is there some resistance there?
Sure. I'm going to come back. That's a great question. I want to come back.
Yeah, come back.
Because it addresses the third one, which is, you talked about the seats on the bus, and the seats don't have any names. It's just, we need somebody to work on this, or we need to do this internally. Are we going to do data analytics internally or externally? Those are the design questions. The third question are putting the right people in the right seats. And that's when the filter that you're describing. And my experience has been, and this is been consistent now, and when I was in tech companies and restaurants and now here, is that there's a bell curve at work here. That about 20% of the people when you describe the direction of this bus and the seats that's required, 20% of them are like, I am so excited. This is exactly what I was waiting for. And if you didn't do this, I might have left. Like very excited. And that's the first 20%.
Is that a type of personality?
I have seen that from all levels. I'll give you the McDonald's example. The current CEO of the company started when he was 16, and 35 years later is the CEO. I've seen people reinvent themselves with decades in a company and be the first ones to be welcoming change. So it is not the people that are there or against change, because many of them have reinvented themselves. That's why these companies are so successful. So it can't. It's really comes down to a growth mindset, fixed mindset.
Okay.
The difference. And there are growth mindsets where people have been there for decades or people have been there for months. But that's one side of the bell curve. The other side of the bell curve, as you might expect, is this is BS. I didn't sign up for this. I thought that this was, I thought we were fine doing the way things we've been doing them. And those people, it's very difficult to bring along on the journey. And you have to be great. You have to do it with grace and empathy, but there has to be an offboarding on the bus because and it's not fair to them. They didn't sign up for that bus. They were on a different one and you're changing the direction. So you have to, with grace and empathy, give an opportunity for those folks. Now, what's interesting, the 60% in the middle is where it's the interesting part, because my experience has been generally about half of those people are waiting to see if you're for real, and if this changes for real, and if this bus is going to go in that direction, then I'm on board. And they're willing to go, but they just need to see some wins. They need to see some credibility, some authenticity that you're for real. Now that's half the group. There's another half the group that are also saying, well, I can probably just skate by nodding my head as if I'm on board, but maybe doing the way things I've always done them. And those folks have to also be, and that's not always that that's 50%. These ratios can change. And some of these things change. We've had to make a change in organizational design. We had an amazing photographer, great guy, very good at his job. We didn't need a full-time photographer. I just disagree. We needed a full-time data analytics person. So I took the headcount from photography and put it in data analytics, and I made the photographer a freelance role. Now, that has little to do with the person. It has to do with the organizational design.
For sure, yeah.
And so we treated that photographer with grace and empathy to be, and hopefully, we can work with them as a freelancer. But so those are some of the examples around it's the how you do it and how leading with your values becoming, actionable, if you will, that matter. So to answer your question, the direction of the bus, seats on the bus, people in the seats, when there are some of the people that have been there the longest are the first ones to sign up for change. I think generally it does help to mix in some folks that can bring a diversity of opinion or diversity of experience, a diversity of age, a diversity of race, a whole set of diversity to mix in. And I think when you mix that old and that new, it's a combination of those things that's a winning combination. And I think too many folks get caught up on it's everything new and anything that old is to be discarded. Wrong. Complete path to failure. If you don't pay respect to the way the reason what got you here,
yeah,
it's still gonna be part of, but it isn't only. We cannot continue to do things the way we've always done them and expect a different result. And what's happened with Big Green Egg in this industry over the last 10 years, there's been a bevy of competitors. This happened before the pandemic and accelerated during the pandemic as everybody was home. So, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you'd walk into a barbecue specialty store or a hardware store or what it may be, and there was a couple brands, Big Green Egg, maybe, another larger brand, been around for a long time. I won't reference. I want to make, there's a lot of brands, but a couple of options. In the last 10 or 15 years, now there's 4 pizza ovens and 5 smokers and 6 Argentine grills. 7, teppanyaki grills, and it's an overload of choice. And, just go on to websites and the whole internet experience, and it becomes overwhelming. And what I'm trying to get Big Green Egg to do is to not be a different company, but be doing an evolved version of the company we've always been. We led in the formation of the ceramics industry, of moving from clay to ceramics. This was a clay cooker for 5,000 years. For 50, 30 years, it's been a ceramic cooker. Ceramic is a better technology for heat retention and refractory than clay. And that was the advance. Big Green Egg brought the lump charcoal industry to the United States, really, as an industry. It was all briquettes. And briquettes, anything you have to put lighter fluid to then cook your food on, does not feel great experience.
Affects the taste. Yeah.
And it was the natural lump charcoal industry that Big Green Egg brought to and has then since propagated. Now, we are doubling down on product. As I described, we brought some of that innovation, and I think we have lagged in innovation. And we built a team, design of the bus, and then put people in those seats. I convinced a lifelong product design guy to move cross country. You've met my friend David, now my colleague. David is leading our product team, and he moved cross country to do it because he believes in what we believe around cooking is an act of love and gathering with family, friends, and neighbors. The second piece of this is marketing and our storytelling. We have had things that happen like Jimmy Fallon, during the middle of the writer's strike, writes a 2-minute love song to Big Green Egg on his own, unsolicited, incredible. And our team was limited in the ability to even thank Jimmy or to repost it. We did, but we didn't get, it's a zeitgeist. Something like that happens. And we've got to be in a position to be able to leverage those. And we're building the marketing muscle to be able to do this. We've built a MarTech stack and data analytics, as I described. All of those things from modern tech, that's what those new competitors that I referenced, they were built in the last 5 years. That's all they know. And we have the value of that brand recognition, that user base, product market fit. We're building around that core, leveraging AI and leveraging MarTech and leveraging tools, but tools are not the house. The foundation is built on a set of values, not the tools. The tools help you, extend that house, extend that foundation. They don't replace it. And that's where I think Big Green Egg is ultimately going to be successful, as being a better, a more evolved version of who we currently have been and currently are, than trying to be a different company and jump on the bandwagon. And now we have a pellet grill and we have, whatever the soup du jour grill is. That is not who Big Green Egg is about. We are about live fire. We're about cooking for your family, friends, and neighbors. We're about independent dealers. That's one of the biggest changes we are the only large brand that does not sell in big box, on Amazon, and at discount stores. And guess what? I did the research. Those are the 3 places that most people buy barbecue equipment.
So is that changing? Are you bringing Big Green Egg to Amazon and bringing it to big box?
No, why? We have a belief that when the local salesperson in your local store takes out their phone and shows you their what they cooked this weekend, that's a better experience. And so we're doubling down. Now, I need consumers and the users to believe what I believe, because if they say, no, that doesn't matter, I just go for the lowest price, that's not our fit with our values. So these are things and I'll tell you, we've got great partners, and we want to make it easier for people to buy our products. Everything we sell is available on biggreenegg.com. Now, a local dealer may be the one to deliver it to you, or you may get it in a box that you ship, so it doesn't have to be. What's happened is that we've skipped over in our go-to-market of our competitors, have skipped over the people that brought them to the dance. I think a great example of different podcasts is how Nike's direct-to-consumer ended up destroying value for the company in retrospect, because they ignored the retailers that brought them to where they are. They ignored their focus on sports and on athletes. And they went after a more traditional men, women, kids, and they're now having to pivot back to who they were. And I look at that lesson. I have been about adding technology, digital, all those things to these offline experiences, what I did in restaurants. And what I'm doing here is preserving the core experience that is the Big Green Egg, adding convenience through technology, non-technology.
Yep. Responsiveness. And
we can be, as an example, we have a customer service team. When I got here, there were too few people. We weren't using technology to track calls. We weren't following up. What happened? We turned on web chat and we got overwhelmed. We had to turn it off. We're getting ready to turn it back on because we know people want to web chat with us. So we just got to be able to build that muscle to be a modern omni-channel experience. An omni-channel is the value is in having a consistent experience across all the touch points. If I want to research in store and buy online, great. If I want to research online and go into the store, great. If I want to research and return it, all the experiences anchored on what is for the customer their best way on their journey, that is what we are evolving around. And I think you can look at, Bonobos and multiple DTC brands that are trying to pivot back to having a retail presence, and the role of in real life and physical, I think, is a reality post pandemic. I think we're coming back to wanting to have experiences with other people in your home, in your environment. And the value of some of that, the only silver lining from the pandemic, I think we can get the balance of that, whether it's in your work life, in your family life, your friends, having that balance between physical and digital in the way that you act, in the way that you cook, in the way that you share meals together.
So there will be no AI powered grill from Big Green, because that's one of the things I've seen like CES the last couple of years, like a whole bunch of startups saying we're the AI powered grill. We're not going to expect any technology like connected grills.
I wouldn't say. I think there are accessories. We already have an accessory where you can have a fan and a web.
Yep.
And
okay.
Accessory too. It is not the core experience. I think the core experience. I will go unnamed, but I will share with you an experience that I had when I was interviewing for the product role. I interviewed somebody who created a connected grill to go nameless. This connected grill, I said, gosh, I understand how you do the connected, you have a metal thing at the bottom that heats up the charcoal, but how does that work? Because the grill, the fire grate down there gets about 1,000 degrees. How does that not melt the metal? Like, how'd you guys pull that off? He said, no, that's the greatest story. Will take on predicted use about 5.5 years. Like, wow, 5.5 years to break down. How do you know that? Well, because we set the warranty at 5 years. So we know they're going to have to come back and buy another one from him. And I said, no. I did my best to not end the interview on the spot.
Yeah.
Just in my head, it said, you just lost the job. That is not how we design products. That's not how we go to market. That's not what being a connected grill is about, so that you can, have to sell them the new battery pack or the new way of, so what some of our colleagues in technology have frustrated consumers about, where, the new things don't back, you have to buy everything new. And that's not how we do business. So we are looking to accessories that will make it easier or faster or know when my food is done. Great. That is an add-on to the experience. But the core experience is 800,000 years of lighting a fire, gathering with your family, friends, and neighbors. And we are not walking away from that. And there's no amount of AI that's ever going to show up in somebody's obituary.
Nope. You guys are creating heirlooms and things that people pass down in their wills versus something that is a forced obsolescence, like some Silicon Valley replacement concept. So I think I saw on your LinkedIn, you have on a mission to use food, tech, and barbecue as a force for good in the world. Is that your new mission statement?
That's my mission statement. I use a Japanese concept called ikigai, which is a Japanese word for, it literally means in Japanese, a purpose for life. And after a lot of soul searching, in the last couple of years, even before Big Green Egg, that came out as my purpose, and it connects my career and my history over the last, now over 50 years of what I'm about and what I want my obituary to talk about and what I want my legacy to be. And Big Green Egg, I made a reference to this, is going to be owned by a foundation. I hope our founder doesn't pass for a long time. But upon his passing, the company will be owned by a foundation. And that is a huge asset, because then people are buying into a company whose profits are going back into local communities through food. And that is a great, again, belonging to something in the products that I buy and how I vote with my dollars, rather than what my dollars are going to something that'll end up in a landfill, maybe in my community or a community 5,000 miles away. Our product is going to be, as you described, handed down generation to generation. We've got stories. I'll give you an example. We were just brought up in a court case. We had a reply to an affidavit for who owned the warranty registration in a divorce proceeding, because the husband and wife were fighting over their Big Green Egg.
Big Green Egg. Amazing.
This is a product they could, for a couple $1,000s, they could go buy another Big Green Egg. There's going to be an easy settlement. But the reason why they were fighting over it was not the cooking utensil. It wasn't the appliance. They were fighting over the memories that they had, and those
specific
memories.
An emotional attachment to it.
The emotional attachment.
They didn't care about the kids. They wanted the Big Green Egg taken care of.
The product becomes iconic when we go beyond a what and we become a why. And Big Green Egg has done that over the last 50 years, and I plan to do that over the next 50 years.
Great word to stand on. Dan, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you, Mike. I'm a big fan, and it's great to connect with you on these topics.
Well, that's my conversation with Dan Gertsacov, Big Green Egg's newest CEO, who's trying to bring the company into the future while continuing to serve and preserve its biggest asset, its passionate community. The Spoon Podcast is hosted and produced by me, Michael Wolf, with production help from Carlos Rodella. And hey, we've asked you before, if you haven't already, please rate and review the show. Check out our new podcast at the Spoon Podcast Network, which you can find on Apple Podcasts. Just go to this podcast, click the Spoon Podcast Network under it, and subscribe to some of our new shows, like Watch What You Eat from Carolyn O'Neill, My Food Drop Rocks from Adam E., and Food Truths from Eric Schulze. Plus, we have lots of other new shows coming out from hosts in the next couple weeks, so keep an eye out for it. All right, folks, that's it for now. We'll talk to y'all soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? And don't forget to give us a 5-star review. You'll find more content like this on thespoon.tech/podcasts.